I thought that, maybe the song's great, but maybe it won't be a hit because I'm doing it or whatever. I didn't really think that I could actually myself have a hit record or a #1 record.
Welcome back everyone to our channel, where we explore the captivating lives and untimely deaths of some of the world's most beloved musicians. Today we dive into the story of a pop sensation whose star shone brightly, but burned out too soon, Andy Gibb. Here we go. Andy Gibb was born on March 5, 1958, in Manchester, England. As the younger brother of Barry, Robin, and Maurice Gibb of the Bee Gees, music was in his blood. Barbara hailed from Irish and English ancestry, while Hugh's heritage was Scottish and English. Andy had 4 siblings, his sister Leslie Evans and 3 brothers, Barry, along with fraternal twins Robin and Maurice. Andy and his family moved to Queensland, Australia when he was only 6 months old. They finally settled down on Gibb Island, which is situated in close proximity to Brisbane, and made it their permanent residence. The family made several trips between Brisbane and Sydney during the course of their life. They traveled back and forth between the 2 cities multiple times. Andy was 9 years old when his family relocated back to the United Kingdom in January of 1967. These events took place. It was Andy's family that brought him back to that location. Additionally, this took place at the same time as his elder brothers, the Bee Gees, began to have a great degree of success on a global scale. During the time when Andy Gibb was a young child and under her care, his mother, Barbara Gibb, characterized him as a character who was both naughty and wonderful. The information that she provided indicates that Andy frequently missed school in order to spend time with his horses at the stables. She made this assertion several times. Even while he was in the middle of his shenanigans, he would return home and declare that he had been in class stinking horse poo. This was something that he did over and over again. In spite of the fact that he was engaging in his shenanigans, this was the case. Andy Kennedy, a film director and producer, is another individual who has commented on his cheery and outgoing attitude. Tom Kennedy is a film director and producer. Kennedy emphasized the fact that his parents, Hugh and Barbara, were always there to support and encourage him. This was something that Kennedy emphasized. Andy would even beg for a limo to take him and his buddies about London, as well as money to go to the movies, which was a luxury that was considered strange for a young boy of his age at that time period. Andy went to the movies when he was a young child. The demands that Andy made were particularly distinctive due to the fact that Andy himself made them. Although Andy was known to be cheeky, the fact that he was adored for his kind heart did not affect the fact that he was admired for his cheekiness. During the time when he was just 11 or 12 years old, he would make repeated attempts to get others to purchase alcohol for him. This was something that he did several times. Andy took consolation in his music as a relief from the criticism that he received from his contemporaries, who believed that he had a superiority complex due to the fact that he had famous brothers. Because of this, Andy was tormented by his peers. When he was 13 years old, he quit school and began playing the guitar, which was a present from his elder brother Barry. He began playing the guitar. In the end, he established himself as a professional musician. Andy's musical abilities were developed in the tourist clubs of Ibiza, Spain, where his parents had been vacationing. Andy's parents had been there on a holiday. He eventually moved to the Isle of Man, which was the region where his brother was born and where the Gibb family had their house at the time. He did this after some time had passed. The first band that Andy ever formed was called Melody Fair, and it was named after a song by the Bee Gees. Andy's first band was called Melody Fair. In June of 1974, the band was born and established. Andy's career as a musician started off on the right foot from this moment forward. John Alderson, Stan Hughes, and John Stringer were the members of the ensemble that was being referred to. John Alderson was the one who played the guitar, Stan Hughes was the one who played the bass, and John Stringer was the one who was in charge of playing the instruments utilized by everyone else. As a result of the fact that Andy's mother, Barbara, is the proprietor of a management company, Melody Fair was able to obtain a number of appearances around the island's hotel circuit. Andy's first recorded endeavor, which took place in August of 1973, contained a song recorded by Maurice Gibb entitled My Father Was a Rebel. Not only did Maurice Gibb produce the music, but he also contributed to it by playing on it. Despite this, the music was never made available to the general audience. Window of My World, another song that Andy and Maurice had composed together during the session, was yet another indication of Andy's developing musical aptitude. Maurice had also contributed to that tune. Over the course of the session, Andy and Maurice had collaborated on several projects. Andy finally made his way back to Australia in 1974, a place that his brother Barry had urged him to see for a long time. Andy's brother Barry had been wanting him to go to Australia. The music scene in Australia, which had been very helpful for the Bee Gees, would also be excellent for Andy, according to Barry, who believes that Andy would benefit from the setting. He had the conviction that this would be the outcome of the situation. The fact that Andy's sister Leslie had already established herself in Australia with her family was another reason that contributed to Andy's choice to return home. Leslie had relocated to Australia with her family. Both John Alderson and John Stringer, who were traveling with Andy at the time, had the notion of creating a band with him. Andy was joined on this tour by both of them. In order to accomplish his goal, Andy planned to go with John Alderson and John Stringer. Alderson, Stringer, and Andy started recording a collection of Andy's compositions while Cold Joy was being produced. Andy's pieces were included in the collection. It was finally decided to distribute this compilation. These included a demo version of the song To a Girl, which Andy sang for the very first time on the Australian television show The Ernie Sigley Show. Another one of these was a demo version of the song. During the recording of the song, Maurice Gibb was the one who played the organ. On the other hand, the song was never made available to the general public, despite the fact that Sigley had said that it was going to be included on Andy's next album. During the month of November in the same year, Joy was in charge of directing the creation of 6 further recordings that also contained the same content. Words and Music, Westfield Mansions, and Flying Rivers were some of the songs that were included in these demos. Furthermore, Flying Rivers was the only one of these songs that was subsequently made available to the general public. Even though this was the case, Andy was able to keep up a work ethic that was somewhat erratic. This was due to the fact that his brothers were the ones who provided him with financial security. As a consequence of this, Alderson and Stringer were left feeling unhappy, and as a consequence of the contradictory alternatives that were offered to them, they finally opted to return to the United Kingdom. Andy joined Zenta as a member of the band within a short amount of time. He served as a vocalist with Rick Elford on guitar, Patty Leod on bass, Glenn Greenhall also on vocals, and Trevor Norton on drums. These musicians were all members of Zenta. Andy was the one who was in charge of the vocal responsibilities, and the other members of the band were also contributing to those chores. The band Zenta was fortunate enough to be able to provide backup for well-known groups from all over the world while they were on tour in Sydney, Australia. Some of these groups were Sweet and the Bay City Rollers. Gibb played the song on television, most notably on the resurrected edition of the Bandstand Show, which was overseen by Daryl Summers this time around. Gibb's performance was particularly noteworthy. The project that was supposed to be released, Can't Stop Dancing, did not end up being completed in the end, despite the fact that there were intentions to release it. On the other hand, Gibb did in fact perform the song through the medium of television. Even though Zenta would eventually become Andy's backup band, they did not participate in any of Andy's recording sessions during the period of time around 1975. This was despite the fact that Zenta would subsequently become Andy's band. Andy worked together with the Australian jazz fusion band Crossfire throughout the time that he was taking part in these sessions. The first record that Andy released, which was titled Words and Music, was only available on the Arts label in Australia and New Zealand, which was owned by Cold Joy. Only the 2 countries were allowed to participate in this agreement. Regarding distribution, this label was the exclusive distributor of the tune as far as distribution was concerned. The song, which was accompanied by another piece of work by Andy titled Westfield Mansions, served as the catalyst for Andy's initial entrance into the mainstream of the music industry. As soon as it was published in 1976, the song immediately found its way to the top 20 of the music charts in Sydney, thus establishing his reputation as an artist who was on the edge of being successful. It didn't take long for the song to become one of his most well-known songs, which provided him with the opportunity to demonstrate his ability and promise to an audience that was constantly expanding in number. Andy and Kim Reeder, who was working as a receptionist at the time, exchanged their vows at the Wayside Chapel in Seven Hills, which is a suburb located outside of Sydney, during the wedding ceremony that took place on July 11th, 1976. The marriage took place in 1976. Over the course of that time period, these 2 individuals lived together in the same house. At a dog show, Andy and Leslie connected with one another because they both had a shared interest in breeding Staffordshire Bull Terriers. This enthusiasm led to their meeting. Leslie, Andy's sister, was the one who brought those 2 people together for the first time. It was at this very time when they had their first meeting with each other. On the other hand, their pleasure as a married pair did not last for very long, since, in 1977, they relocated to West Hollywood, where Andy became involved in the drug culture, notably cocaine. This caused their bliss to end. During his time there, Andy became involved in the drug trade and became associated with it. The reader disclosed that he had fallen into a state of melancholy and paranoia, both of which were driven by his drug usage. This ultimately resulted in their separation by the time they were no longer together to begin with. Not only that, but the reader also mentioned that his drug usage was the primary factor that led to his decline. Prior to the conclusion of the divorce proceedings later that same year, Reader went back to Australia and gave birth to their daughter, Peter, in January of 1978. This took place prior to the day on which the divorce was formally completed. This transpired in spite of the fact that they had made the decision to go their own ways. Andy's difficulties with depression became increasingly serious as a result of a variety of factors that led to the growth of his despair. The swift ascent to fame that he experienced and the influence that his elder brothers had on his musical career were among the reasons for his concerns. Although Andy was successful, he was unable to break free from the legacy that his family had constructed. This was despite the fact that Andy was accomplished. The fact that he had to struggle against a substantial amount of pressure did not prevent him from doing this. Andy was discovered for his skill by Robert Stigwood, who was the manager of the Bee Gees at the time. Stigwood listened to some of Andy's demo recordings. After listening to Andy's demo recordings, Stigwood decided to sign Andy to his record label, RSO Records, at the beginning of the year 1976. Because of this, he took the choice to fly to Miami Beach, Florida, where he worked with his brother Barry, as well as with co-producers Albie Galutin and Kyle Richardson, on the process of writing and recording sessions. While there, he cooperated with all of these individuals. In the latter half of 1976, Andy began the process of developing his debut album, which was titled Flowing Rivers. This record was released in later years. When it came to the album, Barry was the producer. The illustrious Criteria Studios in Miami served as the location for the recording session that was conducted for the album. The Eagles guitarist Joe Walsh contributed to 2 of the tracks that are included on the album. The CD also includes 2 more songs. There are 2 songs on this CD. The song I Just Want to Be Your Everything, which was written by Barry and featured his own backing vocals, was the first success off the album, and his backup vocals were utilized on it. During the course of the whole year, it became one of the songs that was played the most. This was a direct result of its spectacular journey to the top of the charts in both the United States and Australia. It nonetheless managed to make it into the top 30 in the United Kingdom, despite the fact that it did not enjoy as much success there as it did in other countries. There are 8 out of 10 songs on the album Flowing Rivers that were written by Andy, and a significant proportion of those songs were inspired by his time spent in Australia. Andy was responsible for the composition of 8 of the tracks. A number of praises were bestowed onto the record, and this was one of the reasons why. 2 of Andy Gibb's brothers, Barry Gibb and Andy Gibb, collaborated on the composition of the song Love Is Thicker Than Water, which went on to become another single that topped the charts. The album had already achieved platinum certification by September of 1977, which was a huge accomplishment at the time. When the popularity of the album coincided with the Bee Gees' supremacy in the charts as a result of their contributions to the soundtrack of Saturday Night Fever, Andy's career experienced a key turning point that helped him achieve a large level of success. Andy's work life reached a crossing point at this point in time. Andy started working on his second album, which was titled Shadow Dancing, and once again cooperated with the production team. This time, Gibb, Galutin, and Richardson were the members of the team. In April of 1978, the album was released for the first time, and it quickly became his most popular record, hitting the #1 place on the charts in both the United States of America and Canada. The song that was the title track of the album, which was written by all 4 of the Gibb brothers, shot straight to the top of the charts as soon as it was released as a single in the United States in April of 1978. This marks the beginning of a 7-week run throughout the country in which the song remained at the top of the charts. Andy was able to secure his place as a key participant in the music industry by achieving platinum status and becoming the #1 song as stated by Billboard in the year 1978. Shadow Dancing was the album that gave Andy the opportunity to achieve these accomplishments. As the first male solo artist to earn 3 consecutive #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100 list, Andy created history by becoming the first person to accomplish this feat. It is appropriate to express gratitude for this accomplishment. A period of time that was less than a year, beginning on July 30th, 1977 and ending on July 29th, 1978, was adequate for all of these accomplishments to take place. This time span began on July 30th, 1977. It was the album that was responsible for creating a number of additional songs that made it into the top 10, such as An Everlasting Love, which reached its highest place at number 5, and Our Love, Don't Throw It All Away, which reached its highest position at number 9. Both of these songs reached their highest possible rank, which was number 9. Andy teamed forces with the Bee Gees, ABBA, and Olivia Newton-John in order to play at the Music for UNICEF event that was held at the United Nations General Assembly in 1979. The event was intended to raise money for the United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF. Broadcasting of the event took place in each and every nation on the earth. This was immediately followed by the beginning of recording sessions for his final complete studio album, which was titled After Dark. It was with the intention of beginning the recording process that he returned to the studio. The final single that Andy ever released that was successful enough to make it into the top 10 was released in March of 1980, only a few months before the album was made available to the general public so that it could be purchased. Originally recorded for the album Spirits Having Flown, which was released in 1979, the Bee Gees' original version, which featured Andy's guest vocal, was included on the song Desire. The album was released in 1979. A recording of the song was first made for the album. In addition, another track from After Dark, named I Can't Help It, which was the result of a collaboration with Olivia Newton-John, a close friend of the family, also made it into the top 20 of the charts. This record was also a success. The pinnacle of Andy's deal with RSO Records, which allowed him to finish his career, was the release of his most successful tunes, which were released later in the year. On this compilation CD, there are 2 new songs that have been added to the collection. Time Is Time and Me Without You are the names of these tracks. Initial releases of these 2 tunes were made accessible to the general public in the form of singles. As a result of the fact that Andy was having behavioral difficulties that were related with her addiction, Robert Stigwood, the inventor of RSO, made the decision to terminate Andy's contract. This was owing to the fact that Andy was becoming increasingly dependent on cocaine. In addition, the album included songs that were not released as singles, such as After Dark and a duet with PP. It also included additional tracks that were not released commercially. Arnold and Barry Gibb worked together in the past on a song titled Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, which featured Gibb's previous work with Arnold. Arnold was instrumental in the creation of this tune. During the same time period, Gibb was extended an invitation to perform the opening verse of Queen's song Play the Game. The main vocalist, Freddie Mercury, was reportedly amazed with Andy's vocal powers due to his ability to perform, as stated by many stories. Gibb was given the opportunity to perform the stanza in his own voice. According to a number of reports, collectors have not been able to listen to this tape, despite the fact that it was found in Queen's archives in the year 1990. This is despite the fact that the tape was discovered. It is true that this is the current state of events, despite the fact that the existence of this recording has been the topic of discussion. It was in January 1981, while Andy and Victoria Principal were both working on the taping of The John Davidson Show, that Andy had the unexpected encounter with the actress Victoria Principal. This encounter served as the impetus for the beginning of a romantic relationship between the two of them, which was widely published about a short time later. While they were working together, Andy greatly pushed his efforts beyond the confines of the recording studio while they were working together. Between the years 1981 and 1982, he served as a co-host on the television music show Solid Gold, which was hosted by Marilyn Chu. Solid Gold was shown on television stations from 1981 to 1982. Between the years 1981 and 1982, he was employed while serving in this capacity. He was also interested in musical theater, playing in plays such as The Pirates of Penzance by Gilbert and Sullivan in Los Angeles and Joseph, and The Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat by Andrew Lloyd Webber on Broadway. In addition to that, he was involved in the theater. In the United States of America, both of these shows were seen by audiences. On the other side, Andy's struggle with addiction was a factor that contributed to his frequent absences, which ultimately led to his termination from both Joseph and Solid Gold. This circumstance ultimately led to Andy's termination from both companies. Although Broadway producer Zeph Buffman lauded Andy's talent, Buffman also pointed out that Andy's performance was not constant. Buffman's comments were made in connection with Andy's performance. According to Buffman, Andy was the most talented actor among the Joseph ensemble yet, on account of the difficulties he had in his personal life. He had a difficult time being reliable. It was Buffman's opinion that Andy was the most talented performer among the cast of Joseph. Andy was overwhelmed with regret, according to Buffman, since he had given into his bad habits when he was thinking about Andy's dying. Buffman portrayed Andy as being haunted by guilt. Andy was able to achieve this result because he had given up his harmful behaviors. According to Brad Lachman, the producer of Solid Gold, Andy was a captivating and energetic performer who was struggling with his own personal issues. Andy was wrestling with his own personal problems. It was Andy's own personal problems that caused him to suffer. In the statement that he made, he emphasized his clear view that Andy's efforts to gain popularity were eclipsed by the hardships that he was experiencing in his personal life. During the month of August in 1981, Andy and Victoria Principal, who was his girlfriend at the time, worked together to create a rendition of the classic song All I Have to Do Is Dream by the Everly Brothers. After hearing Victoria Principal's singing voice in the shower, Andy was inspired to establish a working relationship with her. Additionally, the duet was Andy's last official single, and it achieved its greatest place on the charts in the United States, where it reached number 51. This was the highest position it ever reached. As Principal pondered on the time they had spent together, she became aware that Andy's behavior was becoming more and more unpredictable, and she became concerned about his physical appearance. It was her belief that Andy's drug use was the cause of these changes. Andy was put in the position of having to choose between her and drugs as a consequence of Principal's ultimatum, which eventually resulted in the breakup of their relationship. Soon after that, Andy began a romantic connection with the actress Carrie Michelson, whom he had initially met during her appearance as a guest on the NBC sitcom Gimme a Break. Andy's relationship with Carrie Michelson began almost immediately after that. Andy successfully fulfilled 2 contracts that he was required to fulfill at the Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas in the years 1984 and 1985. Both of these contracts were assigned to him. Towards the end of the year 1985, Andy decided to seek treatment for his addiction, which finally resulted in his spending some time at the Betty Ford Center. Following the intervention of his family, this occurred. It was around the time that Andy was in the process of recovering from his addiction that he started playing at smaller venues. He would sing both his own hits as well as cover songs. Many comedies that were shown on television had him as a guest star, such as Punky Brewster and Gimme a Break. He also starred in a number of other comedies. He continued to perform on a regular basis in Las Vegas and Lake Tahoe, after completing a tour in East Asia that was not only popular but also very successful. There were 2 nights in a row that his performances at the Vina del Mar Festival in Chile, where he was the main act, enthralled the audience. Additionally, Andy entertained guests during a residence that lasted for 2 weeks at the famed Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco during the month of March in the year 1986. The residency was held in the San Francisco area. While Andy was participating in yet another cycle of drug rehabilitation in the spring of 1987, he did so with the idea that he would be able to successfully overcome his troublesome habits this time around. Andy went back to the recording studio in the later part of that year and recorded 4 songs, one of which was titled Man on Fire. There were also 4 more songs that Andy recorded. Subsequent to Andy's passing in 1991, this song was ultimately released to the public. Andy recorded 1 more song, which was named Arrow Through the Heart, and it was his final recording. Eventually, it was included in the Bee Gees Mythology box set that was released in 2010, and it was included on the Behind the Music series that was shown on YouTube. The composition of the song was a collaborative effort between Andy, his brothers Barry and Maurice, and Andy himself. At the beginning of March in the year 1988, Barry Gibb was in the midst of negotiating a recording deal for Andy with Island Records, which was located in England. 1988 was the target year for the release of a new album, which was the aim. After listening to the demos, Clive Banks of Island Records UK had the intention of releasing a single in Europe during the spring of that year. This would be followed by the release of another single during the summer, and then the album would be released after that. Despite this, Andy experienced a panic attack which led to him missing meetings with the record industry, displaying erratic behavior, and having personal troubles with composition. As a result of these events, Andy was unable to write songs. It was Andy who held himself responsible for the difficulties that he had to face. Despite the fact that Andy appeared to have overcome his addictions and regained his health in the beginning of 1988, he continued to battle with feelings of hopelessness as a consequence of his breakup with Victoria Principal. Robin Gibb, Andy's brother, asserts that his degeneration occurred very quickly and that he had a profound feeling of depression during this time period. Andy's brothers Maurice and Barry showed their want to help him, but Andy continued to drink alcohol despite their efforts. Barry voiced his regret over a violent argument that the 2 of them had. Andy's brothers Maurice and Barry expressed their desire to help him. On March 5, 1988, Andy celebrated his 30th birthday in London, where he was also working on his new album with the same name. This was the 5th of March. As soon as he reported having chest symptoms, he was sent to John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, which is located in Oxford, 2 days later. After the complaint was filed, he was admitted to the facility. Additionally, on March 10, 1988, at around 8:30 in the morning, Andy's physician informed him that additional tests were necessary in order to determine the cause of the chest pains he was experiencing. Almost shortly after that, Andy did not regain consciousness and finally passed away tragically as a consequence of myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart muscle that is most likely caused by a virus. Andy's death was a devastating loss. The years of drug use that he had been indulging in had also contributed to the weakening of his heart, which was a result of the drug use. It was William Schell, a cardiologist who had previously treated Andy, who was the one who confirmed this diagnosis. According to Kim Reeder, Andy's ex-wife, she had anticipated such news, stating, "I always knew that one day I'd get a call with news like this." Kim Reeder said that she had anticipated such news. The notice that Andy had died away prompted this statement to be prepared in reaction to the development. As a matter of fact, all that was required was to wait. Andy had an especially strong connection and profound connection with his elder brother Barry, who had been a mentor to him throughout his career, giving background vocals on many of his songs and helping with him on songwriting. Andy's relationship with Barry was exceptionally strong and profound. The relationship that Andy shared with Barry was one that was profoundly personal and extremely close. Barry made the following remark, which brought to light the love that Andy had for Barry. "Andy and I were twins just as much as Robin and Maurice were." In every sense of the word, in every way, Andy's feelings of devotion to Barry were underlined by Barry's statement. Each of us possessed moles, birthmarks, and other physical traits that were similar to those of the other person. Andy was found to have died from natural causes, which were the result of years of substance abuse, according to his family, who refuted the idea that he had overdosed, since they believed that Andy had died from natural causes. Andy's remains were put to rest in Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, which is located in the city of Los Angeles. After being brought by helicopter to the United States, the park is located in the Hollywood Hills neighborhood. According to the inscription on his gravestone, which reads Andy Gibb, March 5, 1958 to March 10, 1988, an everlasting love, the date of his demise is also included. There is a widespread belief that the words were borrowed from one of his most well-known hit songs. Though his life was brief, Andy Gibb's impact on music and pop culture remains. He left behind a legacy of timeless hits and a reminder of the pressures that come with fame. Thank you for joining us as we remembered the life and death of Andy Gibb. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of the musicians who have touched our hearts. See you next time.